What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bilbrons and Dragons. I'm your host, Bilbron DaoLockStone. So today we're having another battle report for my Molebron DaoLockStone build. And don't worry, I haven't forgot that I do other videos, but these are really easy to produce. And so I can probably end up doing a video every day and still hold to my regular schedule of deep dives and builds and stuff like that. And I do have a cool deep dive coming for you tomorrow. But I just started on this server, the Forged Concordance, really awesome server. The links will be below if you want to join me there. And I'm playing a lot to try and burn through these low levels and get to the good stuff. So I've got a lot of battle reports for you now, but I'm sure I'll taper off as I start to level. So this adventure was called Foray. It was my third adventure, so closing in on third level. It was run by DM Huts and very high marks. Man, I've had 3 different DMs so far and they've all been really good. And Huts might have been the most impressive of them. He was super chill, which was great because we did have a few contentious moments, like you would have in any locker room when, tensions are high and such. And he was really great on the rules, particularly the obscurement rules. Like, if you want to impress me, just casually drop the obscurement rules and get them right, because that's a pretty rare thing. And in fact, he ran a pretty complicated battle involving darkness and, ranges and dark vision and various factors that wasn't the easiest. And I think he did a great job. So, very impressed with the DMing so far here at the Forged Concordance. And the story was called Foray. And oh, you know what? Before I get into the play-by-play, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm doing here, because this isn't just a matter of throwing out a stat block and then trying to mow down my enemies with maximum efficiency. This is a character, and I really get into the role-playing thing. I mean, I have actually been accused of being a better role player than an optimizer because I get really into it and I take it really super serious and put a lot of effort into it. And so I've got a storyline that I'm taking Bilbron on here, right? He's going to ultimately be an ultimate defense caster and a summoner. But he didn't start that way. He's not that way now. He's just a 2nd level warlock. Doesn't, he's brash, he's inexperienced, he grew up in the city, so he's doing all this adventuring now and on the ocean, in the forest, seeing all these creatures that he's never seen and, allies with abilities that he's never seen. And so this is this great adventure to him, and I'm starting him out as kind of a rookie, where he's really aggressive and, more reckless. And he's learning, because right now he's just a standard Eldritch Blasty, Agonizing Blast, Repelling Blast kind of warlock. And ultimately he's going to become this invincible, ultimate defense summoner. And I want to actually show that progression, because in a story arc, characters change. And so in these early levels, you may not have noticed, but I've been playing him quite recklessly. So in the first adventure, I jumped off the ship and into the water, literally the only one as a target available to the seahorses, and I ate some damage. And then in the second adventure, I charged up on the ogre, and you did a lot of damage to it, but he attacked me and hit me with a javelin, right? And so he's learning, and I bring it up because it's very apparent in this particular adventure. I made a ton of decisions based on role-playing and not on maximizing my combat efficiency. But the point is that I wanted him to be taking damage and learning organically that, wait a second, it hurts to get hit and it sucks to go down, and maybe I'm going about this the wrong way. And eventually he will be that ultimate defense caster and summoner that I have intended for him. So I just wanted to explain that, because if people are looking at this from oh, why didn't you do this and that? It would have been more optimal. I'd be like, yeah, I kind of know that, but that wasn't what I was going for here. I'll explain as we go along. So, okay, on to the play-by-play. I got the job, got to the job board first and picked up the job, and it seemed a simple one, just a missing persons case from this logging camp about a week's travel to the northeast. So no sea stuff, as I thought. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. And so I put a team together, and I saw Volk, the Kalashtar moon druid that I actually adventured with before, and I was like, "Hey, Volk, man, what's up? Let's do this again." And the jerk acted like he didn't even remember me. Ugh. But anyway, got Volk on the team. Then we got Radamel on the team, who is a centaur paladin. There was Bilbron, who is a dark elf or drow fighter. And there was Brunir, a Warforged artificer. So that was the team, and we headed out, and we just took the road, so there was no issues with travel, and we arrived in due time, made contact with our client, and he gave us the skinny. He is working at a logging camp. 5 people have disappeared, including his wife. They don't know why, but whenever they go into the forest, there's like disembodied eyes and disembodied voices and, kind of spooky stuff. And the area has a reputation for spooky, fae kind of spirit stuff going on. And that was basically all he could give us in terms of actionable intel. So we said, all right, great, we'll conduct investigation, checked out the scene, discovered some tracks that looked like tiny human children, and started following them. Before we head out, we did talk about how we were going to approach this, because I had learned from my previous adventure that, sometimes there's a bigger picture here that we're not always aware of, and right now we don't know who's responsible, why they're doing it, maybe they're being coerced, what's the end game. So we decided that we were going to not be too aggro at the start and try and talk to people and figure out what was going on here before we started, killing people. So that was the general plan, and because we knew that these things were happening nearby, I decided to hit us with a pass without trace, because it lasts for an hour, and I figured that, we would be in the middle of things, pretty quickly. And so we ventured into the forest, and we did encounter a creature from distance that didn't see us, so we got the surprise on him. So we decided to send Radamel, who was a centaur and therefore also Fae, forward to parley with the creature while the rest of us were hidden, ready to back him up just in case this, whole thing went sideways and maybe enemies popped out and we were going to have to support him. But he made contact and had a nice little role-playing session, and it turns out this creature was a great source of intel for us. So it was a kill muli, we found out, and I put pictures on the screen, and his name was Muli, and it turns out that Muli had been conscripted by a hag into her little gang of thugs, and it was them who was responsible for kidnapping the humans for the purpose of being used in some sort of ritual, which he didn't know what the purpose of it was, but obviously it was pretty bad. And he was being badly treated by the hag and her forces, so he had stolen away at the first opportunity, but he was pretty far from home and was really struggling to survive even. He was like starving and was really thankful for the food that we gave him. So this gave us a little bit of clarity on what was going on here, and so we asked Muli if he would help us, guide us to the spot where the hag was conducting this ritual so that we could disrupt it, and in exchange we would liberate him from the forces of the hag who, they were kind of hunting him through the forest and stuff, and help him get home. And he was cool with that. So we proceeded deeper into the forest, and soon came across the outer layer of the hag's defenses, a fairly small little scouting group. And because, again, with Pass Without Trace and Muli's guidance, we were able to sneak up on them. And after a little bit of an argument about how to proceed, we ended up just crushing them, and it was pretty easy. And I learned, too, that I shouldn't be too aggressive because I had cast Hex, which forced me to drop Pass Without Trace. And it turns out I didn't even really need Hex. I mean, I killed like one guy in the first blast, and it wasn't even close. And afterwards, I regretted casting Hex and not keeping up Pass Without Trace. So, a learning experience, right? That's what we're doing here at second level. We then went further into the forest and noticed a campsite where there was like another layer. And we attacked this position, again, with surprise. This Pass Without Trace thing is really working great. And again, with a little bit of an argument about how to deploy, but, hey, it's all part of the game when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons. And we dispatched them very quickly, but in an interesting way. So we noticed that there was a dryad who was like the lieutenant, and so we all focus fired on her and blasted her out of existence pretty quickly. And in the meantime, I'm like stumbling around, can't see too well. I tried to climb a cliff and I fell, and I needed to use inspiration to like actually get up on the cliff. And then I was getting hit by these darklings because her forces were comprised of darklings and boggles, and taking a little bit of damage, all with my whole role-playing scheme in mind, but just like paper cuts and stuff, not too bad. And once we killed the dryad, I commanded the others to surrender. And the DM gave me a roll at disadvantage on persuasion, and I crushed it, and so I actually convinced them to surrender. And so they threw down their weapons, and we told them, hey, we're the Forged Concordance. We're letting you go this time, but you don't want to see us again. Live in peace, brother. And that was something that I learned as well from the previous adventures, where the kobolds from an adventure ago, the kobolds from last adventure could have ambushed us, but instead they parlayed. And because we entered in dialogue, there was no battle. And nobody died on their end or on our end. And that's always a good thing. So if you look at it in a particular way, this interaction move of commanding a surrender basically killed in one stroke like 5 or 6 enemies, right? Obviously not really kill them, but neutered them and won the battle for us. So talking, guys, role-playing, it can work. It's fun. And that's one of the things that my character is learning. He's like, man, there's not, just sticking Elder's Blast into things isn't always the best and most optimal route. So I embarrassingly thought this was the final battle. And so I used my last spell slot on something completely spurious that was going to literally give us just the teensiest bit of advantage. But I was like, well, it's better than nothing. And I'm going to, it's better than not using the slot. And this thing is over. And it turns out there was still one more battle to go. And I was like, oh, crap. Well, that wasn't too smart. But hey, again, second level, still learning. Although that was more of a player error, because it was kind of cleverly constructed, and I literally thought that was the end of it. But there was one more. We noticed, hey, there's no human hostages here, and Muli's like, yeah, that's not the hag. And I'm like, well, okay, fine, whatever. I don't know, because I'm a city kid. I don't know the difference between a dryad and a hag. And these boggles were like all cool. Like they could stick their arms through portals and they would reappear somewhere else and swipe you. And like that was amazing. And the darklings would like blow up when they died. I mean, I love fighting all these creatures that I've never fought before. Remember, Bilbron was in an Underdark campaign. So a lot of these surface creatures I haven't really encountered in 5th edition. So yeah, one more battle to go. And so we decided to abandon stealth at this point because time was imminent. The moon was rising. It seemed like the ritual could go down at any moment. So we decided to just charge in, figuring it was better that they were readying for battle and not continuing this ritual, which, it could have been a matter of seconds, right? And we would have felt pretty silly if they'd managed to complete the ritual while we're dicking around. So we charged in, and the battle was hilarious because night had fallen and like only one of us had dark vision, and I certainly didn't have it, and I couldn't see Jack, and I'm just stumbling around, and there were some lighting issues with Roll20. Now the DM was good. He clearly had command of the rules, but the problem with Roll20 is that it doesn't actually light up the squares where enemies are. Even though you can't see them, you know where they are. And that just makes it a little difficult to role play. And at one point I was like, okay, I'm going to move in this direction of the fighting, and 1 square, 2 square, 3 squares. And then I bumped into the hag, and I'm like, what? They were that close? I had no idea. And I could have been all like, oh, but I would have known the location, and so let's backtrack. But I was like, you know what? That's fine. I don't care. It takes too long. And this is all part of my role playing thing anyway, because I want him to be reckless and exposing himself to danger. But then he got smacked for 14 damage from the sea hag, which literally took him to 0 and disemboweled him. So that wasn't part of the plan of going to 0, although in retrospect that actually is kind of good to really deep seat that paranoia and that whole like, I don't like being in combat thing that's going to result in our ultimate defense casting and our summoning playstyle. But even though I went down, it was no big deal. We were in command of the battle, had a moon druid, and Radamel, our centaur, was great. He cast Shield of Faith and had a 20 AC, and the hag just like could not lay a glove on him. And that's actually why I had no idea she was doing so much damage, because she just couldn't hit Radamel. And then, I stumbled right into her, and she decided to disembowel me, and it wasn't too hard. It's like, ouch. So yeah, anyway, we killed the hag. And once we did, Muli's memory cleared up a little bit, and he was able to remember the reason for the ritual, which apparently was to summon her sisters and create a little hag coven here. And this also, I thought this was a great touch, because remember, I'm an Earth Genasi Daolock, and my first adventure was at sea, and so my character is definitely on this trope of like, I don't like sea creatures, I don't like going to sea, I don't like swimming and all of that. And, and then it turns out a sea hag was behind it. And he's like, dang damn it, these sea creatures, like we're landlocked and they're still causing trouble. So nice little character moment there as part of the development and the storyline and the character arc on which I'm taking this particular character. So, yeah, I think that's about it. I felt like we performed pretty well. I'm rolling crazy high damage on my Eldritch Blast, so just crushing things left and right. And the roleplay unfurled the way that I wanted it to. And we're setting up these character motivations, and nobody died, and we were successful in the mission, and we got gold, and we got badges, and lots of fun was had by all. And this session in particular, I really had fun role-playing my character. So again, having a lot of fun in this Westmarch server, the Forged Concordance. I highly recommend it. Link is in the description below. Feel free to join me there and we can adventure together. Regardless, thanks so much for watching. This has been Bilbrons and Dragons. I'm your host, Bilbron DaoLockStone. See you next time.